sorry, you were going to say about travesties.
Oh, we've watched some duds this year. I'll just go through some of the ones that like were disappointing. It Chapter 2 was disappointing. Are you going to see that?
I haven't even seen It Chapter 1.
I think you wouldn't like them. I think the first one was really overrated. Although I think a simple edit job and getting rid of like the obnoxious special effects and the jump scare noises, I think would make it a much better film.
Probably already an edit out there for it.
Yeah, I hope so. But yeah, It Chapter 2 I think wasn't even like well structured, and I don't think the adult cast were as good as everyone said they were.
I mean, James McAvoy and Jessica.
Yeah, I think there was a sense that because the kid performances in the first one are generally so good, I think most of the adults in it are like trying to play the characters like the kids.
Yeah.
Rather than showing how those kids might have developed into adults.
Yeah.
And it just is really confusing. One of them in particular, the one who plays like Eddie Caspin, is like he's basically just being the kid in the same mannerism. It's like what? It's like
it feel really surreal.
It's like 35 years older. It's like really weird. James McAvoy was
like watching
okay.
Big.
Yeah, I think Bill Hader's probably comes out the best. I think I really like him as an actor.
Yeah, he tends to be pretty good.
But yeah, I think the film's really kind of confusing. Structurally, it's awful. Like it's literally
the pacing's all over the place, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like 3 hours, and it's literally that they all arrive in this town and then they go off in different directions, and it's literally like a long extended sequence for each one, and none of it is like, and it doesn't even serve anything. It's not like they're all collecting something in order. I think that's what it's meant to be, but most of them don't succeed. So you literally just, it's very, very episodic. Aladdin, I can't believe we watched both Aladdin and Dumbo.
We're always destined to watch both of those films. I think Lion King was the one that we were going to miss out on. Dumbo, I mean, it's Tim Burton. Aladdin, it's Aladdin. But I wouldn't say. What did I give Aladdin?
Aladdin actually was better than I thought.
Aladdin was better than Dumbo. Dumbo was a hilarious dumpster fire, but it was a dumpster fire.
Oh, I just thought it was boring and disappointing.
You can't kill a film like that where Michael Keaton is hamming it up.
If you took out Michael Keaton, that would be...
Yeah, oh god, yeah. That would be awful without him. Well, I mean, like, you got Alan Arkin and Danny DeVito trying their hardest.
Alan Arkin's winging.
They're all three of those actors. I mean, less Alan Arkin, because I don't think he's been in a Tim Burton film before. Well, I think he was in Frankenweenie. I can't remember. But, like, Danny DeVito and Michael Keaton, it's almost sweet because you're watching them. It's like, especially Michael Keaton, he thinks he's in, like, a 90s Tim Burton film. Like, if you took that performance out and put it in, like, like Beetlejuice or, like Mars Attacks or something like that, it'd fit perfectly.
Oh, absolutely.
Because Tim Burton had a genuine vision back then and like a belief in this style of filmmaking, but now it's just like this weird guy in the middle of a boring as hell film. It's really
he does
funny.
say that. Yeah. It's hilarious how like the
he's off the chain.
The conflict in the plot is revolved by him just going nuts.
Yeah, literally.
At
the end, he just starts pulling.
He just sets his own park on fire. Yeah. I'm gonna skip some of the boring ones because I think we've spoken about them already this year. I think the three we need to talk about, which are I think the three big duds. One of which I think is genuinely fun. I saw Cats.
Yeah.
Which is. It's just worse than I could possibly have imagined.
Yeah, I was almost tempted to see it, but then you responded.
It's like really like. It's such a disaster. Like it's like unspeakable. I mean, I don't really want to kick it by its whilst it's down, but it's just such an awful idea to begin with. A film that has a show that has such little narrative to begin with, and to try and
dated as hell. Like Cats was like a big thing in the 90s. I don't understand why the film's coming out like 20 years later.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous, and they try ever so slightly to give it some sense of like narrative and to ground it in one character's eyes, but it feels even more confusing because you're like, am I supposed to be following anything that's going on?
How much am I meant
You
to
have no idea
things?
what they're singing about. They keep talking about jellicle cats and like genuinely it's like...
What?
Yeah, what the fuck does that even mean? It's never established. Can you tell me what a jellicle cat is?
Made out of jelly? I don't know.
No, it's some kind of thing like... Basically, the structure of the film is... You
Aren't
see
they
a bunch
being
of,
like chosen by a
bunch
head
of
cat
cats.
to be turned to a human or sent to the real world?
Yeah, it's to be essentially sacrificed on a hot air balloon.
Wasn't expecting that.
They send off to a hot because it's to be reincarnated.
Yes,
so they all love it, and it's
I've heard Taylor Swift is actually kind of like getting into it in that.
I mean, some of them are kind of getting it.
Like Idris Elba as well. I'm assuming he does something, but maybe he doesn't.
Yeah, he's like the villainous one who's he wants to be put in the hot air balloon.
But is that surely that's fun in any way?
No, not really. It's just kind of horrid. Like the whole thing's horrid.
Did you see the early version with the fucked up CGI? Have you heard of this?
I watched it before. Because wasn't it taken?
Yeah, so there were shots with unfinished CGI. It was in the cinemas for a good couple of weeks before it got withdrawn, because there were a bunch of shots that people started noticing. There was a shot with I think it was a person that had they been textured like a cat, but they hadn't been modelled like a cat, or they were modelled like a cat and they didn't have any textures on, something like that. There's like a modelling.
I actually have some inside celebrity gossip. I can't use names,
really?
But I heard that because someone I know knows someone who is like a film critic, and they went to see one of the very first critic screenings of the film, and there was still like green screen. You could see green screen in the thing, and it was the critic screening, and then they interviewed Tom Hooper and made a comment about it, about saying like, because obviously you use a lot of CGI, and Tom Hooper was like, no, actually I use a lot of practical effects, and then after the interview they were like, but I just when we saw it there was a bit of green screen we saw, and then Tom Hooper was like, what? No, I don't know, and it's just such a monumental fuck up.
Yeah, literally it reminds me of when the 5th Transformers film came out, and there were literally 2 edits of that going. Like, it didn't even get withdrawn. There were 2 different versions of the film being shown in different regions of the world. Like, not even like this for this region, this for this region. There were I think there were different shots. Some of the CGI was different. The voiceovers for the robots were different. Like, there were different lines in English for some of the robots. In both versions of the film, the aspect ratio is having like an epileptic fit because Michael Bay couldn't decide what aspect ratio to have it in. Literally, it's sorry.
Yeah, sorry, keep going. Of course he didn't.
Well, I mean, I think I've told you this. I went into that film with like a bunch of Jack Daniels because I was like, this sounds like a train wreck.
Lad,
enjoy this. Literally on like opening Friday, no one was in there because everyone's sick of Transformers.
Absolute baller.
Yeah, that's the way I do it.
Transformers.
Exactly.
Didn't he once describe his directing style as fucking the frame?
I think so. Maybe that's an urban myth. I know he said that he makes films for teenage boys, but I can't remember if he actually
He's
said
gross. I hate him.
Yeah.
But yeah, final word on cats. Also, they all look fucking terrifying, and also they keep singing into the camera. They keep breaking the fourth wall.
Oh, what, like Return of the Jedi style?
I hate it. Oh yeah, but I'm kind of like enjoying that film, so it works for me there. But like cats, they keep like clicking and like walking towards the frame, and then there's a bit at the end where like they're all like looking at the sky after, I won't spoil who goes up in the hot air balloon. But then Judi Dench and like 4 of the other cats behind her, they all suddenly like turn to the camera. It's like this shot of them, and then Judi Dench is like, you've seen us work, you've seen us play. The Jellicle cats is like, what? We haven't seen any of this. Like, it's so upsetting.
I was kind of hoping it would be fun in a nonsensical way. But
I know, it was mostly boring. I went with 3 other people. 2 of them did enjoy how bad it was, but me and the other person would like, it's just really boring. And it's easily one of the worst films I've ever seen. I have to say, I'm sorry. Glass was terrible.
Yeah.
I was really, really amazed at how favourable some of the reviews were.
Yeah, there were a few favourable reviews looking back.
Quite like considering how poor that script is.
Yeah, it wasn't even as good as.
And again,
like Split was pretty bad, but it wasn't that bad.
Yeah, and I don't like dumping on films, but this is like M. Night Shyamalan who got an Oscar nomination for The Sixth Sense, and I rewatched Unbreakable. which actually does have
Holds
some
up
really
pretty well.
solid storytelling beats. And it's like he can do it, and yet the amount of exposition, the amount of just like dialogue, where telling when you should be showing, it's just.
I wonder if he just rushes
it's
through scripts
appallingly
now.
bad.
Because they all come out crap now. It's a shame because he clearly has it. It's just...
He has it in him, and he still has interesting ideas. Like, there are things about his last 3 films which I think could have worked, but they're just garbage scripts. They really are. Really annoys me. And Last Christmas.
Yeah, well, it is Last Christmas now. That's the one film that got a 1 out of 10 this year.
Really? From you?
And yeah, I thought
Did Glass not get 1 out of 10?
Oh, actually, maybe it did.
Surely.
I
Glass was worse than Last Christmas. Glass
Really?
Christmas.
Really?
Yes!
Last Christmas was like hilariously bad. But maybe that's what would put it.
I think that's the thing is I think Last Christmas is like a future classic. I'm gonna watch it next Christmas.
Yeah, that's true.
The guy who's the actor in it,
I can't remember his name. I put him on our big collage of characters, didn't I?
Hilarious. He's just I like to think
was
he knows
amazingly
exactly
bad
what...
in Simple Favor, and he was amazingly bad in Last Christmas. Him just like
Are you sure you should be
riding around on his bike. Like, I kind of called the figment of your imagination.
Even I called that
early on,
and we're going to talk later about how
so
I can't
funny.
get twists. I never get twists, and I got it. Henry Golding.
That's it.
He's fucking amazing.
He's
I love him.
He's like literally like an alien. He's like, he just looks at people with this like completely bemused expression. Like, I'm assuming Paul Feig thinks he's the most attractive man in the world because he's cast him as that on 2 separate occasions, and yet he can't act properly like a attractive human being, a charismatic. He doesn't have any charisma.
Like the plain nice guy. Yeah, there's no charisma, and yet somehow it makes that film amazing. But yeah, I think the thing I really like, not even funny, is I think the Emma Thompson stuff is really, really bad.
Oh my god, yeah. Well, that and who's the Asian actress who plays the like shop owner? Where she was like putting on an Asian accent.
Yeah,
when she doesn't have one.
I really don't like. I think maybe this is me being a snowflake about it, but I think the film has like the audacity to say it's all about kind of how, Britain should be multicultural and how Brexit is a bad thing.
Like,
which shoehorns it in like the last half an hour, and yet its approach to representing anyone who isn't white and British is appalling. It's really bad. Like Emma Thompson casts herself as
it's literally like a 50s like caricature.
Yeah,
like so bad. I haven't seen many.
Hello, like they're going to send us.
She's like back in. Doesn't she say back in old country? Or
yeah,
like that?
It's absolutely atrocious.
And it's like, that scene on the bus where the guy like yells at someone for being an immigrant or something like that comes out of nowhere, and it just happens, and there's no
Croatian immigrants.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It comes out of nowhere, and it doesn't. And initially, it doesn't seem like it leads to it. It's like, oh, I guess they put that in just so that to kind of make it culturally relevant.
I think,
and then they kind of lead up. They kind of follow on from it later on, but it doesn't go anywhere meaningful. It's just like, oh, we've made this hollow film about Christmas. We probably need to put some cultural subtext in there. No, Brexit. That's relevant.
But that's the scene on the bus. I think like could possibly. I don't think it is as it stands. It's not. But I think it could be a nice scene in itself of her.
If it was like contextualized, maybe.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. But it's not. But also, it's completely contradicted by how terrible Emma Thompson's like Croatian immigrant character is. In that it's just totally over the top. It feels really patronising.
It's amazing because I know how cool she is usually in real life.
Yeah.
She's generally
like liberal, intelligent.
Yeah. She's done all sorts of stuff. Yeah. And in this, she's like...
And Bryony Kimmings is the other writer, and I saw her show at the Edinburgh Fringe last year, and she's fantastic as well. Such intelligent people. They're intelligent people. Oh god, yeah, showed me. Such intelligent people involved, and it's just such a misfire, but it's totally saved by Henry Golding.
He is something else. It's like
it's the bit where she's eating junk food and his head just like pops into frame and he's just like, are you sure you should be eating that?
Yeah, I told you about that. I highlighted.
I saw the film.
Yeah, I know. But when we got out, and that was the first thing that I mentioned to you because it was so amazing. Literally, no, she's sitting on a step next to the ring tent, and he's like walking along the ledge behind her, like.
I mean, like
what romantic couple would do that?
We went to see with our friend as well, and like there are bits where she's just like, you know, something bad's happened, and she's like in a hut, and we'll see him in the background cycle into frame.
He just like yes, he like glides into frame as well. In fact, we were walking back from the cinema, and someone like came along on a bicycle, and I was like, "Oh, wait, it's Henry Golding."
Also, ultimate spoilers. You know, skip for a little bit if you want to see Last Christmas. But
the most literal version of the song.
It's hilarious
in the world.
It's so funny.
Like, how did someone listen to George Michael?
Last Christmas, I gave you my heart. Literally.
Like. I don't think that's what the song means.
I know. But I'm gonna watch it every year. I think it's a classic.
It's a future classic.
And you know, I think it has because it was trying to be good, and I think but I'm quite serious. The best films like that are the ones where a lot of sincerity went into them and a lot of mad ideas went into them, and they don't work for the right reasons, but they work for me in a different way.
I don't think the right ideas went into it, but it's very funny.
No, I didn't say the right ideas. I said the right intentions.
I don't even think it's the right intentions. I think it's just a mess.
No, I think they wanted to make a good film.
Well, everyone wants to make a good film.
No, not everyone. Not stuff like, you know, snakes on a train and stuff. Well, Pain and Gain's different in that Pain and Gain is like Pain and Gain.
Yeah.
Pain and Gain is like politically so horrible, and Pain and Gain is like laughing at real people who have died.
Oh god, yeah. But you can't deny that Michael Bay was like, oh no, I just want to troll people. Maybe he thought that, but he was having fun whilst he was doing it. Anyway.
I think the people who made Last Christmas wanted to bring people together and lead a happy world, whereas Michael Bay was like,
let's tear people apart.
Lol, dead people.
Yeah, pretty much. Anyway.
Any more films that you didn't like that you want to discuss?
Not really, we covered most of them.
Shall we talk about the Best Picture nominations as far as we can?
Here we go. The best part. All our favourites of the year are there, except, all the ones we thought were good.
Okay. So I actually have them in order of box office performance.
The best metric as well. The best metric for all of the best films of the year.
So Joker it is the highest grossing film with over $1 billion, and it's 7th for 2019. I'm not going to read out the numbers because no one cares. Second is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which is the 22nd highest grosser.
Oh, what, overall in the year?
Yeah. It's pretty high, isn't it?
For a Tarantino film, I'd say it should be higher, surely.
You think of all the
He's like
junk that comes out. And it's an 18.
That's true, yeah.
1917 is currently 3rd, but it's still in cinemas that's 32nd overall. Ford v Ferrari is 36th of the year overall. Parasite is 46th overall, but it's still in cinemas.
It's international film.
It's pretty
not foreign language.
It's not foreign language. It's international. Little Women is disappointingly low. It's 47th, but again still in cinemas. Those two are still rising. And Jojo Rabbit, I was surprised to see was the lowest. It's 86th.
Yeah, those last two are surprising. I'd imagine both of them would be higher. I would have thought that both of them would be higher than Ford v Ferrari.
Yeah, same. But I guess Christian Bale and Matt Damon can. Do you think they can sell a film?
They can, but I don't think Ford v Ferrari got much advertising.
No,
I haven't heard anyone else who's seen it.
When I watched the trailer, I just didn't care.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a film with a great hook to it. Whereas Little Women, it's a classic property. Jojo Rabbit had kind of that unique selling point to it. The unique selling point. Parasite has gotten a lot of praise. Yeah, Ford v Ferrari is kind of like the outlier of all.
Everyone was surprised to see that nominated for Best Picture. Marriage Story and The Irishman are both Netflix films, so
yeah.
I think let's quickly just...
we rate those by subscriptions. And we can subscribe.
Yeah, I tried to see if there was some kind of view things, but nah, like viewing figures, but hard to say. So should we just... So first of all, let's just mention neither of us have watched Parasite. Hasn't been released yet. Thoroughly felt... it sounds like...
We'll be seeing it.
It does sound like, for all intents and purposes, that it's one of the best, if not the best. Everyone loves it. I don't want to hold it up too high, but it's good. Have you seen any Bong Joon-ho films?
No. Well, there's a whole bunch that I recognise the names of, but I don't think I've seen them.
I know, I'm the same.
Which one was Mother?
Mother?
Yeah.
The Darren Aronofsky film.
Oh, maybe that's what I'm confusing it with. We saw the trailer today and it said from the director of Mother, but it wasn't with an exclamation point.
Oh.
So it must have been another film called Mother.
It must have been. And then there's a few that I've watched and you haven't. And then you've watched Ford v Ferrari, which I haven't.
One film that I've watched and you haven't.
And then there's 4 that we've both watched. So let's start with the ones that only one of us have watched.
Okay.
Do you want to kick us off with 4 v Ferrari?
Yeah, I don't expect this to win Best Picture at all, but I would have wanted it to... Is it nominated for cinematography? Sorry, I realise I keep asking.
I don't believe it is.
I kind of... Because basically my biggest takeaway from this was I am a sucker for cars and racing on a stylistic level. If you ask me about the innards of a car, I'm probably not going to be able to tell you anything meaningful about... I can't tell you much about how my car works, what's driving it. But I love cars on a stylistic level, and it's the same with racing. I think I've sat down to watch Formula One racing, or whatever racing, a handful of times, and I've been really bored because it takes forever, and it's like barely anything happens over the course of hours. Sorry everyone who loves the racing. But the idea of racing that I've seen from films and video games or TV, wacky races, I really, really loved as a kid. I love it. Like, there's something about how visceral racing can be at its peak that I absolutely love. A lot of my favourite video games are racing games, and Ford v Ferrari is one of those films that sums up everything that I love about racing. How, like,
do you think it's something about when you like
it can be?
Do you think there's something to do with it as well, of like attaching drama to it and attaching dramatic stakes to it? Or is it more just a visceral thing?
It's both, I think. I wouldn't say that Ford v Ferrari is a particularly strongly emotional film. There is an emotional through line to it which really works. And I think they're both really good at it, Matt Damon and Christian Bale, particularly Christian Bale. I think this is one of his best performances in a while. But yeah, no, there's a definite thing about how visceral it is. Like, James Mangold was a perfect director for this because it feels like all of the scenes where what's his name? Ken Miles is driving, and you see it from his perspective, and you see like all the cars kind of have this layer of dirt and grime to them, and like everything's kind of shaking about, and like when they're testing the Ford GT and it's like falling apart and they're trying to get it up to speed. There's like a real kind of nuts and bolts kind of like tangible feeling to all of it. It's a real like I think I came out with the idea that like there's a real sort of sense of like engine oil running through the veins of the film. Like the whole thing is
that's a that's
all of my body parts.
Put that on a bumper sticker.
Exactly, yeah.
On a t-shirt.
Ford GT, you put it on the back of your Ford
Quote
GT.
Oliver Luddy.
Yeah. You know, the whole film has that, and then the sound design as well. Like, I don't think it got nominated.
I think it is. No, it's up for sound editing, sound mixing, and it's up for best film editing. So general editing. It's a good sign.
The editing didn't jump out at me, but the sound definitely did. There's a real like rumble to the whole film, a real engine noise to it. I wouldn't say it was the best picture of the year. Like I said, I'd probably prefer to Us and The Lighthouse, but it really brought to life everything that I really like about driving and racing and cars. It's got like, although the production design was great as well, like it brings to life that period of, I think it was it was 66, or it was in the 60s. It brings about that like golden age of like American automobiles back when they weren't like shitty Chevrolets. It's like, you know, companies striving to be the best, and like Ford like actually trying to go for Le Mans, which was kind of a bold thing for an American motor company to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I saw it with my dad, and he is into racing. Probably he really likes watching Formula One, and he actually wasn't as fond of Ford v Ferrari because he thought it was too stylized. He didn't really connect with it on a kind of realistic level. He thought a lot of it felt slightly too exaggerated for him.
Okay.
Whereas I think that's the film's great
As
strength.
in the aesthetic is stylistic, or
more
storytelling?
kind of more in the execution, in the characters and the storytelling. But I think that's one of the film's strengths, is that it brings about that excitement and that level of like push that people go for in racing. Like, of course, in real racing, people aren't like constantly fucking over each other in the most like extroverted ways to get ahead, but that's the basic spirit behind it, and it kind of brings that to the forefront.
It sounds like a similar thing to like a film like Whiplash, where have you seen that?
Yeah,
So,
I saw it when it came out.
So like Whiplash, I remember speaking. Anyone who knew anything about drumming or indeed music was like,
it's when you get those videos on YouTube. That's
which is
real drummer watches Whiplash.
Yeah, exactly.
I wouldn't use these.
And to be fair, like the whole film, J.K. Simmons is basically just telling him to drum faster, which obviously isn't how music works. It's just like he's literally drumming, but because it works so brilliantly on a dramatic level, it works.
Exactly.
And I think you have to take those liberties with things like that. Sometimes you can make a film work being completely accurate to whatever you're depicting. But
I don't think this was the case to do that. I think this was. Yeah, this was the case to stylize it a bit, and I really enjoyed it. It's one of my favourite.
You've inspired me to watch it.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, a lot of my favourite games are racing games. I can't think of many like racing movies, driving movies.
Did you see Rush?
No, I didn't. Which I heard is very good.
That was good. That was good.
I saw Drive, but I need it to kind of grow on.
That's kind of a different thing. I don't think Drive is so much. It's
like
less about driving than you'd think it is.
I don't know. I think there is like a core thing of like a driver and their car, and like what driving kind of represents, and like.
Oh, okay.
There is a deeper
in that
thing
sense,
there.
I mean, I guess it's less like.
It's just. I
think this is a crass way of putting it, but I don't think there's a lot of kind of car pornography in Drive.
Oh no, but
that's not cars.
No, that's not what I'm.
But no, you like driving in a different.
Although that's why I got into Transformers way back then, is because Michael Bay
there's some car porn in there,
knows how to shoot cars. Like, yes, like I can criticize him all.
Shiny it is, shiny cars. I don't know why the guy from Mad Max 2 is.
Mad Max. No, that's another one. That brings across car culture really well.
Of course.
So I guess there are more driving films that I like than I realised, but this really worked.
Very good. Very good.
I don't think it will win. It will definitely not win.
I don't think
it's probably one of my favourites of the lot. That Little Women, I'd say, are my two favourites of the lot of the Best Picture noms.
Well, there are a few you haven't seen.
Exactly, Parasite might be with them.
Yeah, I'm really holding out for Parasite. I'll quickly summarise the three I've seen that you have not.
Yeah.
So I've seen Marriage Story, The Irishman, and 1917. Marriage Story is probably my favourite of the entire bunch. I think for me, my personal tastes, it's the one matches up the best. I'm
looking forward to seeing it actually.
It's just again, I think
a character piece.
There's a problem, I think, running through some of the films that are up for Best Picture, which are problems that come down to the screenplay. Like they're so impressive in so many of the other points that go into filmmaking, but the script, there are fundamental problems with some of them. And Marriage Story is one where that is just so solid. It kind of totally comes first. Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson, I think, are both fantastic in it. I think particularly Adam Driver, like I think this is one of... Yeah, he's working so much at the moment. He's so prolific.
And he's balancing it well. He's doing like Star Wars and then doing all these little films in between.
Exactly. But I think their performances, the reason those two stand out amongst a lot of the other nominations is I think they're so generous, and they're really, really playing to each other and trying to get something from each other in terms of character motivation. It doesn't feel like they're doing it for the camera or for themselves. It's completely, it's like a synergy between
literally
them.
The camera's there by like happenstance.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that is a really, really difficult thing to do as an actor, to be that in sync with who you're acting with and to respond to their choices. And
it's not two actors I would match up either, but it sounds like they're perfect.
No, they have really, really brilliant chemistry. And there's just certain scenes that are just a masterclass of acting between them. It really is. And I'm very disappointed, we'll get to this later, that actually Noah Baumbach isn't up for Best Director.
Wow.
Because I think I can see why, because it's a very unflashy film. There aren't like extravagant camera movements and there aren't massive sets.
It's not obvious that he's pushing the envelope.
Exactly. And the hardest thing to attribute to a director, I think, is the quality of the performances, but they have such a huge part in it. Like, you look at scenes in Marriage Story where it's like Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson just like having a shouting match with each other. There will have been very few people in that room because, it's got to be an intimate environment. The actors, they're really going for it. They're really screaming at each other in certain sequences, and they need to feel kind of safe and supported enough so that they can push each other and go there. And that's a really, really difficult environment for a director to facilitate. And Noah Baumbach's clearly done that brilliantly, but it's just less obvious to see the director's hand.
Yeah.
And yet, I think that's what makes a brilliant film. In a lot of cases. And there's just so many interesting. I really, really want you to see it because there are so many just heart-aching scenarios, and it's never.
You say it's like kind of similar to Roma in some ways, in kind of like a depiction of like everyday life, and kind of just keying in on drama that doesn't seem like much in real life, but.
No, actually, I wouldn't say that. I think everything is quite clearly on the screen. No, because Roma. I know what you mean. Roma, I think
has almost documentary.
Roma kind of captures a lot of things without kind of drawing attention to it, and there's kind of you can uncover little gems in the frame, if that makes sense, because there's a lot of wide shots and a lot of things coming that the film just captures. Whereas I think Marriage Story, everything is very intentional. Everything's there in the script for a reason, and it's all about showing how these characters, how their scenario changes and how they change along with the situation. So I know what you mean. I think you'll see that it's not so much that. I don't know what I'd compare it to. I think most people say Kramer versus Kramer, which I haven't seen, but purely because it's about a divorce and a kid who's caught in the middle of it. But I just think the performances are some amazing supporting performances as well. Like Laura Dern's really good, Ray Liotta's really good. There's a kind of a trio of lawyers that are in it at some point. Like Alan Alda shows up as well. Alan Alda, and he's actually brilliant. He shows an important different side because basically divorce lawyers are represented terribly in the film. It's basically the film is about how fucking shocking the system is in America. But genuinely, I watched it late one night and I was a bit of kind of, this is going to be quite heavy. This is going to be, this is one that I'm going to have to focus on, which I think, to be fair, I felt with Roma. I was like, this is one that I need to be giving a lot to it to get something out of it. And it's really, really engaging immediately. And to the extent it's entertaining because you're so invested in the characters, and it's almost like tension is constructed, like, old-fashioned, like, fuck, if this doesn't go right in this scene, something terrible is going to happen to these characters that I care about. Yeah. I think it's a triumph.
Is that your pick?
Well, I'll get to that. I'm still deciding. There are two that I'm arguing against. I'll quickly talk about 1917, which is the kind of the favourite, and
but not the favourite. Last year, the favourite.
Yeah.
Sorry, continue.
Yes. 1917, I'm kind of in that camp somewhere in the middle with it. Of course, like it's such an extraordinary achievement. The way the one take thing. It's not done in one take.
It's like Birdman, isn't it? It's
yes,
like a pseudo one take.
Yeah, but I think it still works unbelievably well when you're watching it. Yeah. And I think something like that can only work when you have like production design, which is incredible. The look of the film is amazing. The world that they're in feels incredibly tangible, and there's a lot of detail packed into it. To be honest, I think the comparison to Roma works more for 1917 because the frame is constantly capturing things that just add more texture to the world and just add on to the horror. Like there's like a sequence in a field where they're walking past and you just see all these kind of like dead cows in the background, and it just captures how much everything is sort of meat and disposable. So on that level, it's an absolute triumph. But I think I was unfortunately fairly unmoved by it, and I think the problem comes down to the script, and I don't think the quality of the dialogue in 1917 I think is fairly weak, and I really didn't think it had to be. I think, and ultimately the way I felt was that the one take thing ultimately was only in service of itself. It does work in capturing...
I mean, the trailer kind of puts it across that way, isn't it? It's like, this is a film with one take. It's like, well, okay, what about the story? Like,
I mean, it's just very bare bones for me. I mean, other people have felt differently, and I think the main problem is I think there wasn't anything sort of specific or unique about the characters. They all felt purely functional. And I think what they needed to do is they either needed to make the dialogue more, just like better in that, like give the characters more their own specific things that we don't see in other war narratives. Like
that's the problem.
Have their own passions and their own motivations beyond.
It's so easy for so many of these war films to have basically the same narrative and the same emotional beats. And it's just like you need to be more creative than that, especially with like a topic like war where it's an important event that you want to represent. You want to do it emotional justice, so write it well.
Exactly.
Make it distinctive.
Like you can find out, the people who fought in that war must have had all kinds of fascinating stories and their own reasons to being there and their own things that they missed, and you don't really... And whenever any conversations like that happen at all, they feel very simplistic. They feel very much like, this is the most basic version of this character we can have.
It's the same character we've had in Dunkirk and I don't know.
Well, I mean, Dunkirk, weirdly, in this sense, I preferred 1917 actually, but Dunkirk works better because Dunkirk I don't think is trying for a second to be that. I think Dunkirk...
Exactly. Well, yeah, it's committed to the style.
There's very small amount of dialogue in Dunkirk, and it very much puts its cards on the table and says this isn't really about the characters, it's more about
It's kind of a like a stylized representation of the event, isn't it? It's almost like a... I mean, I wasn't a big fan of it as you are, but it's almost like a representation rather than like a depiction, if that makes sense.
Exactly, and I think if 1917 had gone down that approach of having basically very little dialogue at all, it would have worked better, because I think it just would have been more honest about what it was trying to do.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a problem as well of like, not to spoil, I think you should see it because it is like a remarkable achievement.
Oh yeah, I'm seeing it next weekend.
But there's basically a problem of famous actors sort of show up.
Colin Firth's in it
every now and then. Like they're almost like cameos, but they come at kind of checkpoints that does make it.
It's like every 20 minutes.
Yeah, and I think it, along with some of the way the film is shot, it's constantly sort of reminding me of the artifice of it.
Yeah, it's
and
Hollywood.
I think it would have been better if it was just like complete unknowns. Particularly, it's all heading towards an encounter with a particular character, and it's really disappointing when that turns out to be a famous actor as well.
Yeah.
And the encounter conflict has been foreshadowed early on, and nothing really is made of it. So it's a it's a setup that
Who's
doesn't
it gonna
really
be?
pay off.
Oh,
yeah,
it's
and
that guy.
it does. It takes you out of it, and I think like the comparison I can only give to people, maybe it's not fair because it's they're different films, but like my favorite war movie at the moment is probably Platoon, the Oliver Stone movie,
right, yeah.
and I think that. That film is so like down and dirty and grungy, and there's nothing flashy about the way it's shot. Really, it's almost shot like a documentary, and it's one of the most like traumatizing films you see. And it's fundamentally about the psychology of the men who are fighting in those wars and how it tears away at their humanity and how they change because of that environment. And I think 1917, it's about. This sounds terrible, but like the aesthetic of what it was like there, and you don't really get a sense of them sort of it chipping away at them on the inside.
Just ends up being like the end of the Muppet movie, where it's like
I wouldn't say that.
Well, it's like it sounds like it's the same song. It's like, where's the next celebrity
I
cameo?
see. Okay.
It's Milton Berle.
Yeah.
He's in the card lot.
I'd say it's a better representation of of World War One than the Muppets is.
I don't know. I think Fozzie was a very convincing general in the Muppet movie.
But yeah, basically, I really, really think it's impressive, but I think it missed a trick in terms of like, particularly when the camera is constantly on the two main characters, you have the time to like put more meat on the bones in terms of like who these people really are. And you don't get any sense of it really.
No.
But there are some absolutely lovely moments in there though that I won't spoil for you. Some lovely moments. And then I'll just quickly go over it. The Irishman, I watched. I want to watch it again, but at the same time I don't because it's so long. But again, like I said, I kind of feel like I've tried to watch most of these films twice.
Yeah. Surely it says something about a film, because like one of my favourite long films from the past couple of years was Blade Runner 2049, and that I'm literally looking for a chance to fit it in. I'm like, it's I can't remember, it's 2.5 hours long, and I'm like, okay, I really want to set aside the time for this. Whereas you with The Irishman, you're like, oh, it's so long, I can't possibly fit it in. Surely that's like a distinction of a film.
Oh no, I agree. I mean, I didn't
versus...
like it. I was really bored by it, to be honest. I think the problems that I can quantify with it. First of all, I think there's a big problem with Robert De Niro's character in that I didn't care about him at all at any point in the film. I don't think his kind of the point of the film is that his character doesn't really change. His situation changes all the time, but he's a stoic, sort of emotionless, but fundamentally violent man. And he goes through all these things where his status changes, his relationships change, but he doesn't.
Yeah.
And the film does kind of follow through with that as a theme. But for 3.5 hours, that's an unbelievable amount of time to be spent with someone who's completely unchanged and is completely incapable of like assessing their own morality. And again, I know that's the point, but it's just boring to watch. It's not engaging, and it's almost like, and I think that one of the reasons is that it's established early on that he's a war veteran from the Second World War. And that probably had an impact on him. But you only see sort of the aftermath of that.
Yeah.
And it's about him going through all these kind of political mafia events, which are like, sparingly interesting. Like some bits that build up momentum and tension, and other bits just feel like a history lesson. And yeah, I think that character doesn't work. And also, I think the de-aging makeup doesn't work, personally. I think the film really relies on this idea that this man grows, he's getting older through these entire sequence of events. It covers so many years. And I think it needs to show that his body is changing, he's growing up, he's going into different positions, different occupations. And yet, like, on the inside his morality is fundamentally unchanged. But he looks about 70 to begin with, so that development doesn't track
remove
at all.
The wrinkles and that's it.
And you can't, like, he moves like an old man all the way through. So when he's standing next to Joe Pesci, even though the de-aging makeup in itself, the digitalization, even though that's done well in of itself, in the context it doesn't work for me at all. And when Joe Pesci's like calling him kid and stuff, I don't buy it. I'm sorry. And there are interesting facets to it as well about like his relationship with his daughter, but most of the scenes that commit to that are scenes we've seen done before in Goodfellas, The Godfather, pretty much every other Scorsese film, and it doesn't follow, and it's not, and it can't really be about those things if such a small amount of time is dedicated to it. Most of the time is dedicated to scenes we've seen in other Scorsese movies, which is like Robert De Niro like laying out a load of guns on his bed and being like, which do I choose for this job, and him like whacking mobsters and stuff like that. I just think it's really, really indulgent, and it could be half the length and have the same effect, but no, some decent scenes.
A resounding recommendation.
Sorry guys. Maybe I'll watch it again one day.